Hello, Woden's Day. Right, from Global Finance we've got an interactive chart that I'm going to move through. You can pause anytime you like. So at number 1, the opening chart, I've got government interacted with and pushed the highest government debt to the top. So we've got Japan at the top, 226. Then Greece, Italy, France and Ireland. That is for government debt. 1B, I've interacted with non-financial businesses, and we've got Ireland, Spain, Portugal, France and the United Kingdom. Non-financial businesses, that is. So that's mainly property developing, and you can see the result of that is in Ireland, Spain, Portugal, France and the United Kingdom. Next we move on to households, and again this is part of property, buying in this case, borrowing to buy the property. Ireland, United Kingdom, Portugal, Canada, United States and Spain. Moving on to financial institutions, Ireland at the head again, United Kingdom, Japan, France, South Korea. Those are financial institutions that are in the most debt, which gives us a total. 1E is my chart number reference. Totals gives Ireland at the top, gold medal to Ireland, Japan silver and the United Kingdom bronze, with Spain, Portugal and France coming in behind the leaders there. So you can go back and pause or do whatever you like, and we'll move on to my number 2, which is DSRs and crisis dates. Now DSRs, I think in this instance, are debt servicing rates, often called debt servicing costs. In these charts the background vertical grey lines are recessions as normal, but they've put in red vertical lines as well, which are banking crises. So in Australia they've had recessions but no banking crises or even a crisis, and we can see the debt servicing costs for Australian households are, I believe it'll be just over 20% of household budget. 20% of a household budget goes to servicing debt per month, per year, whatever. And that has consistently become, or has consistently been possible for Australians, because what causes a banking crisis is when the bank basically pushes the people too far and they cannot support the debt servicing costs anymore. This happened in Finland, you can see in the top middle there, in 1991, when debt servicing costs went to 30%, too much, and it crashed right down. And where it is now at 15, 16 is perfectly fine for Finland. Italy, top right, had a similar crisis in 1993 at a number of only 16 or 17. Different countries, households can support at different times different amounts of debt servicing costs, but generally it's always, if you push them up too high, they will crash down. And they crashed down in 1993 in Italy at 17, and have crashed down again at about 19 or 20. Italians, basically, it looks like, cannot service high debts. Korea, bottom left, is different. Being an emerging market, everything is growth, growth, growth. So you can support high debt servicing costs because you know that the future will be so bright, and you'll just be able to pay your old debts. So they got up to 40% before they crashed down, and now they're at 30%. But it's the end of the growth model in Korea now. That's South Korea, obviously. And it's, I think, dubious that Korea will be able to hold their debt servicing costs at 30%. Now it's the end of their super growth mode. United Kingdom crashed twice, 91, when debt servicing costs were only 21, and they've crashed again at 29. And the reason the United Kingdom is just about ticking over at the moment is because those debt servicing costs have been brought down quite a lot. But as in America, which is very similar looking to the United Kingdom, they've come down to 22-ish as well at the moment. That's enough to keep things ticking over, but is also enough to keep the entire economy damped down. Neither economy has any chance of really flying away with debt servicing costs that high on huge debt. Right. Out there in the world, so it's Australia, fixed home rates fall below floating mortgages. I'll go to the second paragraph. Floating rate loans account for 90%, floating rate and 90% of Australian mortgages, so the Reserve Bank's reduction of its benchmark by 1.25% to 3.5% between November and June provided homeowners with almost immediate benefits. The cuts did little to stimulate home sales because of concerns that slowing economic growth would drag down property prices. Loan approvals unexpectedly fell in July by the most in 5 months. Obviously, the eastern economic position is very critical for the Australian housing boom. They're just about keeping it together now, but a crack over there in the east and that boom will bust. More than it is at the moment. Over in New Zealand, we'll get an idea from the headline what's going on there. Bernard Hickey wonders why New Zealand is not printing money and thinks we are being severely disadvantaged by not following the crowd. Your view. The article goes on to say, with the rest of the central banks of the world just about printing money and debasing their currencies, New Zealand is not. Their currency is becoming strong and they rely an awful lot on exports, and their exports are being hit. Basically, the question is, should New Zealand just follow along just so they can get their currency to follow the race to the bottom, because they're getting left behind up at the top with a strong currency, which is harming the current country. Right. Up in China, China's cylinder economy. Government subsidies to green energy and high-speed rail have led to mounting losses and costly bailouts. This is not a road the US should travel. Patrick Chovanec. August the 3rd, the owner of Cheng Solar Company leapt from the 6th floor of his office building in Zhuhai, China. Li Fei killed himself after his company was unable to repay a $3 million bank loan it had guaranteed for another Chinese solar company that defaulted. One local financial newspaper called Li's suicide a sign of imminent collapse facing Chinese photovoltaic industry due to overcapacity and mounting debts. President Barack Obama has held up China's investments in green energy and high-speed rail as examples of the kind of state-led industrial policy that America should be emulating. The real lesson is precisely the opposite. State subsidies have spawned dozens of Chinese cylinders that are now on the verge of collapse. If you don't know what Solyndra was, you can imagine. From also Sprach analyst, we've got capital flows and trade surplus from in China. In blue are the capital flows that we're going to look at, because trade surpluses, export-import differences, there's one big red sticky down there. I forget why that was a strange one. But what we've basically got for most of this chart is blue sticky upness towards the left and right over towards the right. It's all capital flow. Capital is flowing into China. But have a look for the last year or so, and there's an awful lot of blue sticky downness. Now, capital flow, we can think, is flow of capital from bright bunnies that are investing their money in the place that they think that they can make more money. And for the last year or so, to a greater degree, they do not think that that is China. Yeah, and that's quite important, because this is the bright money that is now not going to China. And over the way there, South Korea unveils a $5.2 billion stimulus. It's a certain size economy. $5.2 billion is quite a big stimulus, and basically South Korea won't be stimulating itself if it thought everything was super duper. Things are not super duper out east, and there's going to be ramifications. Oh, ramifications. I'll tell you what, this is digital trends in China. Noodle slicing robots are taking over local restaurants. I think this is a YouTube video. I'll put it down underneath so you can just watch that. But the idea is it's just one thing, that people are being taken over by robots wherever possible, because that's what makes more money for capital, or it makes more capital for capital. People are increasingly expensive and always and ever have been a bloody nuisance. Bye.